Hello. Doing another live stream and got to pause for a second here, and I should have set this up ahead of time, but I didn't. I need to just relay that to information to my Sawyer Heaven's Gate Facebook page. There you go. I don't know why it brings up that big picture of me, my face. Actually, one more second. There's probably nobody there anyway. Good. Go back to this. Okay. All right, we've got the decent screen there. Hello there. I guess I haven't said anything in the chat yet. All right. So what am I doing here? Okay. All right, I don't actually have much of a plan right now. There's a lot of things. Yeah, I guess I'll fill in some loose ends that I left from the last broadcast. For instance, I was asked about David Icke, what I thought about him, and I basically liked a number of things that he has to say. And some things that I don't believe is from the next level, but other things seem to be on spot on, I guess is the way you say it, the right way to say it. But like the idea that the reptilians are controlling the world leaders, that was what T&O said was happening in the 1980s. They said that that's what the Luciferians, fallen angels, space aliens, which I believe the reptilians would be included in. Yeah, I mean, T&O would have considered them to be the same, whether even if that was just a suit that they were wearing. You know, I mean, and that's another thing I liked about, anyway, that they send thoughts to humans. They transmit thoughts to humans and their souls, actually, that they can ride herd on a lot of humans at the same time, very quickly, and so they can give ideas to the people that have the most power, because their intention is to try to steer them in directions to where they're going to develop more and more technology in order to, because the Luciferian space alien fallen angels want to get off the planet. Because they've been off the planet before. And so, but they were restricted to the planet in the previous civilization, I guess, I don't know if it was towards the end of it or when that actually happened, as depicted by Genesis chapter 6, but Tiendo talked about as well a little bit. They didn't talk a lot about a lot of these things. They gave little hints here and there in between the lessons for overcoming our behaviors, our human behaviors. And so looking for where else I said about David Icke. Reptilians, and then who? Oh, I guess I didn't put in much else about that. But one thing that I enjoyed, I liked his interview with what was his name? Credo Mutwa, which was very interesting because Credo, according to David Icke's interview, which Credo is talking on, of course, and says that he was like hiking somewhere by a mountain that was considered to be a forbidden mountain, and somewhere in southern Africa, and and he was abducted. A blue light, if I remember correctly, kind of took him over, mesmerized him, and drew him into. And then he was met by, I think, 2 individuals, and then he was taken to some kind of chamber, or I don't know if it was underground. I got the impression it was underground, but I may be wrong about that. And while he was there, they did sexual things, experiments with him. And I believe one of them actually conversed with him. I'm not sure if it was how it was conversion. It might have been by thought, because Luciferian space aliens might know that technique, because if they were once working for the next level in some degree of a next level vehicle, even though it wasn't an adult next level vehicle, I don't think. But they would have learned, they would have had a vehicle that was, and a mind that was strong enough to have mental communication with another, because I think that's what it amounts to, is whether you have the equipment for it and whether you have the strength to run that equipment, so that accurately you're transmitting accurately everything you're thinking and feeling, or I don't know about feeling, but I think would be part of it. Because I mean, the next level members have feelings. They do experience joy, and they do experience frustration with their own growth at times. Not the same as they do when they're in the overcoming process on a planet like Earth, where it's become a hideous environment, where evil is the rule. And when I say evil, I'm not using the word evil lightly like people do anymore. Like Donald Trump just used the word evil to refer to the Democrats. Well, I mean, this is the pot calling the kettle black, because anybody that's, the head of a country and is voting on people, sending them to war to kill other people, is not playing by the next level rules. And so that's the ultimate evil, and especially if they're teaching people that it's justified to do that. Then they are basically teaching people to be evil and justifying it, and that's the only unforgivable sin. The killing itself is maybe an unforgivable sin too, but I don't think so, because Jesus said the only unforgivable sin is blasphemy. And now I hear people talking about blasphemy. I think the Pope said, no, a cardinal came to the Pope's defense and said that the accusations that the Pope was involved in a conspiracy or something like that, maybe around the sex abuse cases, was unfounded and was blasphemy to say that about the Pope. But see, they're not thinking about what Jesus would say. And that's the problem. Because the only reference that many people have that are in the religions are the scriptures, the words. And to them, it's not real, exactly. I mean, in some ways it might be real, but in other ways it's not going to be real. And so they're going to get a distorted view of it. And so they're going to, when they talk about things, they're going to talk about those terms that are in there. Blasphemy. Okay, well, what is blasphemy? Of course, it's speaking is a key part of blasphemy. If I take apart the Greek word, it is speaking against the next level's truth. Okay, so is the next level's truth have anything to do with whether the Pope knew about some of the cover-ups that were taking place to protect his clergy from being indicted for sex abuse charges or whatever, was he complicit in that? Did none of those bishops actually, report to the cardinals? Or, of course, maybe not, but maybe in the United States there's only so many cardinals, so maybe they don't know. But, there's enough allegations against them anyway, going through the ages, that they were involved with having sex with minors by our standards now, which I think is a good standard, a decent standard. But in the past, the standard was, like in India, for instance, a 14-year-old girl or a 12-year-old girl could marry. I guess as soon as they had their period, they were considered to be marriageable because they could produce children. And so, and another way of looking at it was in relationship, I think, to something Paul in Tarsus said that, I forgot what it was now, but it had to do with whether they had pubic hair. And that some people in the beginning of the religion, which is the religion is the distortion of the truth, even though they may actually repeat the true words that Jesus said, it gets very quickly mixed up. It doesn't take a long time for it to get very mixed up in people's heads. What did Jesus say and what did Paul say, for instance, in the letters? So when those letters were made into the New Testament, with the other letters that were attributed to some of the disciples of Jesus, and maybe even a disciple of Titus, some people think might have been Paul also. And some think he might be another person, because I think Paul said he did some things with Titus. So I don't know. I don't claim to be a theologian on Paul, but I know a lot about what he said and what happened to him, and it doesn't add up in my boat. And I got verification of that when I saw Stan Mody's letter, Stan Mody's article that it was put in the Heaven's Gate book that Doe left behind for us to know that was all truthful. Because Tiendo said that everything that Jesus said in the red letters of the Gospels can be considered true. But they didn't say that. They didn't talk about. Well, he also said that the miracles were 90% exaggerated. I think is the number he used, if I remember correctly. 90% exaggerated. I thought that was a high number. And so I was surprised by that. I was surprised by a lot of things Tiendo said. All the time. And that was common. You couldn't second guess them. And they said things that always challenged us. And not just me. I'm sure it wasn't just me. I know it wasn't just me. Because I know what the others went through. In degrees. Because the only individuals that really knew what each classmate was going through would have been Tiendo and that classmate. I mean, the classmate first, of course, and then T and Do know it if the classmate told them about it. Or if they, I mean, they could read people, but they didn't read people. They said they don't read people. They don't read us to try to figure out what we're thinking. So they took us for our word and the things that we said. And so they always wanted details. Like if we ever brought something up, like it was a general question about, what if you were traveling to Texas and the speed limit said 65 and and your car could, you could have a long question and you could say, okay, so when was this happening? And they would ask you the question, and they would try to find out what you were actually asking about specifically. What was, they wouldn't get 20 questions. They would just say, can you be specific, please? And I'm not sure they said please, because they weren't about politries. Politries? That's not a word, but maybe it's, I can make it a word maybe, in my dictionary. Hello, I won't repeat any names because I got called on the carpet the other day for saying somebody's name on the chat room. And they were right, because it looked like a real name. I would hope that everybody comes into these things has their own little name that's not their real name, because why expose yourself to any more negativity and hatred than already comes to us when we don't go along with the crowd. But so Doleright 13 says hello, Sawyer. Thank you. I appreciate the hellos. I enjoy doing this. I have to admit it, even though it's not something I kind of look forward to, like like I'm getting a drug fix from it, or or a high from it, or a caffeine dose, or or a marijuana hit from it. I'm not getting that kind of a high, but it does feel really good to talk about T and Do and have people actually wanting to hear about it. That's I don't I don't like the heckling, but I don't mind it if I don't have to deal with too much of it. But and sometimes the heckling, some people actually heckle because they're going through such a battle in their own mind over something that they're so broken up about it, so they end up taking the side that they're broken up about leaving. I believe that's the way it works sometimes for us, and so they come across like a like condescending and and to be honest, recently I've seen that increase since this Kavanaugh thing, to where he got put on the Supreme Court. I'm looking at the friends that I have in my different accounts that I have. I have two main Facebook accounts, and so I'm looking through what they're posting and what they're saying and what other people are saying in comments to. And I'm even starting to wonder if there's being Facebook messages being put out that are intimidating people, that are even talking about killing more now. Like, with memes that are, depicting getting rid of a senator by, killing him. I mean, like, whoa, it's like, I don't remember it being like that. I mean, maybe in some circles it's like that. Maybe I just haven't been exposed to them. But I can't imagine that the Facebook people wouldn't be jumping on that kind of stuff. But they may be getting so much of it, they don't even know what to do anymore. Because I'm not saying that's all being done by, it's all being done by the lower forces, for sure. But the lower forces are manifest through the humans. And so it can be done intentionally by humans, like trying to sow seeds of misinformation and disinformation and confusion. and and trying to set people up like the FBI does, try to get them to make a mistake, and so they can come down on them. And wow, what if you liked what that person said? Even though you were thinking that he didn't mean kill to be literal. And what if you liked it and then that got recorded somewhere as you liked it? So now your name is recorded as liking the idea of killing a senator. Which, and with the government wanting to get dirt on everybody that they can, that they don't like in the government or outside the government, to try to bring them down. I don't doubt that there's all kinds of seeds being sown of sexual abuse. Who knows? This is gonna be such a civil war. I hate to say it, and I don't look forward to it at all. I hate it. I hate it. I hate watching it. I hate what they're talking about in the media, in the mainstream media especially. I'd rather talk about the flat Earth than what they're talking about with their justifications for all the things that they do, and who's got the biggest balls and all that, and not just the balls. The females have balls too. Of course, and nothing gender about it. I mean, the males are mostly the ones that have had all the power, and I know that, and the privilege and all that. I'm totally aware of that, and especially the white one. But I mean, it's to go around everywhere. It's like the venom is being spilt by all genders and all sexual orientations and all hatreds against men and women against each other, brother against sister, sister against brother, just like Jesus said would happen during the end time, and that's where we are right now. And I know it's not. I'm not. I have to stay abreast of everything in my mind because I get clues of things that maybe T&O might have me talk about. I don't know what they're going to have me talk about because they don't send me a message saying, okay, so you'll talk about this today. I don't. That's not the way it works. The way T&O taught. They will give you ideas. They can give us all ideas. It doesn't have to be someone like me. I'm just same as everybody else in that regard. Well, that's not true because I was with them for those years. I do have a database of the experiences with T&O, and I do love them. I do, but I know that I also have given into weaknesses, and I haven't overcome all those weaknesses, and I've got more than one. I've got a number of them, and but I learned right away when they helped me return to wanting to be of service again, which they did by a whole series of dreams. Well, it wasn't that many dreams at first, maybe 4 or 5 at first that got my attention, where I was observing Doe, and Surodi was like the person, like the archangel there, or the angel standing there and next to me and showing me the classroom of Doe talking with students. And I couldn't see any of the students. They were like, shadowy kind of, not shadowy, but I just knew there were students there, but I couldn't make out any faces or what they were wearing or anything like that. And I don't know if all the students were there that were among the 38 plus 4. And any others that I didn't know about that the next level had their eye on, even though they might not have been part of the classroom, that maybe left their bodies during that same time period immediately after they did. So and yeah, I lost where I was anyway. But so whenever that happens, I lose where I am. Then I just start a new thread. And sometimes I get back to it, and maybe I'll see some questions in the chat room to help me get back to where I was actually, that led me down this path of trying to broaden the picture and link it with other things. But, well, yeah, I mean, it's... Well, I was talking about, I wanted to update, well, there were a few things I was asked the last time I was talking in the live stream. See, now I'm confused about what I want to talk about next. We're going to take a breather. Maybe somebody sent me a spike of some sort. That's not out of the question. That the space aliens can do that, and that I don't know if humans can do it. If to other humans, or human spirits can do it. Maybe they can. Yeah, the human spirits can do it for sure. They can interfere with somebody. Their thinking, their thought processes, by sending them a thought that distracts them, or an image. And that was part of the overcoming process to get rid of all the discarnates, all the spirits, all the dead humans that were trying to fulfill their own programmed desires that they had while they were in a vehicle. And some of them are helpful, and some of them are not. So to the human kingdom, and the ones that are not push themselves on us, and make it very easy for us to go down that path in some ways. Although if we've had lessons of going down certain paths, then we're not so easy to be led down those paths anymore. And probably everybody experiences that through depression, highs from substances and addiction and habits and loves and everything. All the departments of life all become the testing ground to see if we've got a spirit that can keep on pushing up. Like the blade of grass, all the blades of grass, Tiendo taught, don't grow all at the same rate. And some sprout up a little bit here, and then this one sprouts up a little bit here. So we can't judge each other. Even if we're doing things that are evil, we can judge the actions as evil, but we can't judge that individual won't change or can't change, because we don't have the option. We don't have the perspective of what that individual was up against. I mean, they might have a full-fledged Luciferian space alien fallen angel sitting on their head for most of their life because they knew they could groom them to become a world leader. But Tia know the ones that said that we can't judge others, and of course Jesus said that, and and he also said that it becomes very hard. It becomes increasingly hard to change the further we move away from our conduct and behavior, or behavior and ways that have been provided to us over millennium from the next level through their representatives that they sent through. In our case right now, through the teachings of and the actions of Adam, Enoch, Moses, Elijah, Jesus. Perhaps one of the Buddhas, maybe the first Buddha, and then the students that were doing tasks for the next level, would be like the Old Testament prophets, and I don't say this because and also Muhammad, and Doe didn't say that I don't know, but I know he felt good about the way that people with the Islamic faith were covering themselves to be more chaste. That was the purpose of it, to be more chaste, and also to not put that out, because see, if we put out that we're not chaste, okay, by showing all our flesh to everybody, then we're actually drawing to us the vibration that wants that flesh. So there is a responsibility on both sides of it, that need to be overcome. And so that's why covering yourself up doesn't stimulate that in the other person, unless they really got a strong demon, that is manipulating them into behavior that's, it becomes violent and all that, and which I would never blame, no matter what a woman was wearing or a male was wearing or not. I wouldn't think that it would have anything to do with somebody that was intent on just raping and killing and stuff like that. So I don't, I can get things wrong when I talk like this because if I can't equate something that Tiendo said or taught to it, and it's not that I can't. Actually, I can, but it's a lot of times it's after the fact, after I catch myself maybe going too far, that I start, I wonder, I get, maybe sometimes they help me, because I feel like I do have crew members or members helping me with these broadcasts so that I don't misrepresent Tiendo, because that's the last thing I want to do. Even though I do it to some degree, I dilute it. But my understanding from Tiendo is that's part of the program. That's how we grow. Is that they give the tasks of communicating to people the same task, in stages, like those blades of grass that are growing, and so there's the stair steps that we're taking, and T compared it to actually a piano roll of lessons, and humans are going through these lessons too. And so it's the next level. T used to call the human kingdom the real world. And whenever she would say that, I would go, wait a minute, how is that the real world? I thought to myself, it was always puzzling. And but then I realized that after I left, it was when I realized it, even 10 years after I left, it took me a long time to start reflecting back, because my vehicle didn't want to. It was bucking. Anyway, but it takes a long time to come up to consume the mind from the next level. And that means take it into yourself and believe it. Believe it as fuel, like bread, like Jesus talked about it as the bread of life. And it is. It's the bread of life. And that's actually the first time I actually said it that clearly, I think. And saw it that clearly. I always stumbled at that spot in the past when I would try to equate the two of consuming with being how it becomes our nourishment. The nourishment of the soul, because that's what the next level is after. They're looking for the graduation of souls, not vehicles. They don't need human vehicles. They can take human vehicles onto their spacecrafts, but how often they do that, I don't know how often. Tiendo didn't talk about how often, so I shouldn't try to interject it. That's the way I can stay on track better. But that I was aware. I never heard him talk about it. But see, at first, when Tiendo were still awakening, well, I mean, they were in a constant form of awakening. But they got some big chunks to start off with. And in 1973 was a big chunk. And then two big chunks, actually, the two biggest chunks of information. And that didn't just come as one thought. It came as compound thoughts. Like, for instance, in Boerne, Texas, or Bourne, Texas, whichever way you're supposed to say it, where they were for about 6 weeks, a little less than 6 weeks, they were in this ranch house. After they felt like they were run out of Houston, but they felt like they had next level help to get the piano down the stairs of the house they were living in at the time. And they were in Byrne, and they were trying to figure out what they had to do together. They knew that much, that they had something to do together. They were drawn together for some reason, but they didn't know what it was, because they had no other interests that were really alike, except for a strong faith in their Heavenly Father, a strong belief in their Heavenly Father, even though I don't know if Doe was practicing or not. I don't know if he was going to any church or anything. I know he dropped out of seminary because they were too restrictive about what they were teaching. And I know he was curious about astrology, which wouldn't have been a standard Christian teaching. And I know they were dabbling with Eastern religions, and tea especially I know about, that she was seeking in her own vehicle, was seeking with her mind attached to it to some degree. It came in gradually, but she was into theosophy, and she was an astrologer. But Doe said that she would never do somebody's chart unless they asked her 3 times, and she wouldn't tell them that. And because she wanted to make sure that they really wanted it before she put out that kind of effort. I don't know if she was getting paid for it or not, but she was a nurse. And I did want to correct something I was asked about in the comments of my last live stream, that said, was commenting about the rumor or the reports that came across that some people may even still be on Wikipedia, for all I know. I haven't checked it in a long time. I tried to update it one time, but they wouldn't let me. And I should try again now that I got a book published. Maybe then they can consider me to have something to say. But now I lost where I was again. Talking about tea and waking up, and 3 times with the astrology. I'm talking about Doe and his interest in theosophy, Well, I know Doe got into it a lot more when they were trying to figure out the meaning of the three little chunks of information that they got, which was the reason I was bringing this up. I was talking about this in the first place, which was in Byrd, where the first chunk, as I understand it, I don't know if they came together or separately, was that they came from the next level, both of them. The second chunk was that they came to bring updates to the Bible, and that they were here to fulfill prophecy, was the third one. But they didn't know what the prophecy was that they were supposed to fulfill. So that started them studying everything they could get their hands on. Now, I don't need to go through all this history because you're better off reading it not that anybody asked me to, I'm not suggesting that, but you can read it in the 88 update, and I provide all the information that they provided to us that I have. I provide freely if you just send an email to Sawyer, SAWYER, HG as in Heaven's Gate, at yahoo.com. And I'll send you some package through like WeTransfer or somebody that will allow me to freely send about 4 gigabytes worth of data, a little less than that. But I was talking about the psychiatric thing, and that's what I wanted to get back to. And that, you know, they say that Doe was in a psychiatric hospital. Now there even some people are even saying that he was in a number of times. You know, it keeps on growing. You know, and pretty soon it's going to be that, you know, he was in it for his whole life, and it was just everything that we know about him was imaginary. He didn't even exist. Sound familiar? But because that's the direction it goes, because the Luciferian space aliens are bent on. The second thing that they're bent on is trying to keep people away from looking to the next level, the true next level, the true kingdom of God, the only kingdom in the heavens that is above human. It's not mammalian, evolutionarily above human, just like a plant. The mineral kingdom, and then there's the plant kingdom, and then there's the animal kingdom, and then there's the human kingdom, and then there's the next step. And T coined the term next level. Now you see the words next level used frequently by comedians and all kinds of people. But that's where that started from. And see, once T would talk about something, when Doe would talk about something, that goes into the ethers. The ethers can be picked up by anybody that picks it up, depending on what they're drawing on, what kind of, you know, their interests are. You know, they're going to be open to certain things. And that's probably why musicians sometimes write songs using the lingo first, like Lil Uzi Vert. I'm not sure he's putting. Yeah, I think he put some kind of having VA stuff in material in one of his videos, maybe, or maybe I'm mixing it up with somebody else. I know there's like, well, 3 or 4 or 5 that I've seen and heard in the pop culture. That's what happens. It becomes diluted and distorted by the words being used and abused, like the word Heaven's Gate now. You know, people are naming bands after that, and naming songs, name movies. Of course, that movie came out before T and Doe created the name Heaven's Gate. I don't know if they were aware of that at the time, and who knows whether T was behind that movie being put out, so that it could be a clue to Doe on something, because they did get clues from movies. It didn't it was clues to help them know that the steps they were thinking of taking were the right steps. So in other words, the clue didn't make them believe more in what they were talking about. That worked that way for us more, I think, because we were dealing with the doubts. Even if we didn't think we had doubts, like I didn't think I had doubts, but looking back, I know I had a bunch of them. And there were little doubts; they weren't real obvious doubts. I talked about that in the last live stream. I know I gotta cover the same ground sometimes. So instead of saying that, I should have just said what the doubts were. Well, it's like when they said at first that we'd be walking on a spacecraft. They didn't say walking. They said we'd be picked up by a spacecraft with our bodies. And they were talking about our human bodies at the time. And they said that in 1975. And then in 1976, that started to change as maybe, or we would, that we don't know if that's the way we're going to go. So, I mean, it was really pretty soon that it changed. So the people that say, everything changed that Tiendo taught. Well, no, everything didn't change, but change was the name of the game. And every change was a test for the students, even if they said something different than the last time. And so at first, what we don't see in the press talking about this with the way they changed was that they went to the students and said, you know what, we think the killing in the streets that we thought we were going to be killed because of was being shot down by the press with Walter Cronkite on national news on several occasions. But I want to get back to my doubt, and that was that that for some reason I thought that I was going to be killed by telling the truth, like a martyr. And what that showed was that I had I had this martyr influence with me, a Luciferian space alien, fallen angel, or some discarnate. I'm going to just say lower forces from now on. With me, trying to twist my sense of faith and desire and belief in everything Tiendo said, which I had from the very beginning, and to twist that into something to where it was about me. See, a martyr is about me looking good, right? Even to myself, thinking that I'm acting like a saint by dying. And so Tiendo said right in the beginning, in 75 and 76, they said this is not a martyr trip. It's not a martyr trip. Those are their words. And when they would say that, I didn't think I was a martyr. It's not that I really wanted to die. I didn't want to die. But I thought I was willing to. I felt like that. And that's probably because of the soul that came back into this vehicle. That was brought back, like Jesus said, all the souls that had made any significant progress with all the members in the past were going to be brought back. Not just the ones that died for Jesus, but any soul that had made some significant progress, is the way I think Doak put it. maybe he didn't say significant. But, and so, you know, that could be the 144,000 number. Tiendo didn't ever say, or somewhere in that range, you know. But, because the next level can actually have a certain amount of souls that they deposit at any given time. So, but I don't know if that's if that's true. There's something about that doesn't feel right in terms of thinking that the next level sowed only, well, not only, but 144,000 souls. Because the reason I'm questioning that is because like Jesus taught that there were seeds that were sown, and I believe those seeds represent souls. And Tiendo talked about them as deposits. They were containers that had programming in them that were put into human vehicles and wrapped around human vehicles, actually. Not put into, but wrapped around human vehicles. But that soul had to kind of sprout before it would become part of, become a disciple. Okay, so the disciples of Jesus were sprouting when they met Jesus, and some of them maybe when they heard Jesus talk. I mean, even if he just said, "Follow me," some of them could have sprouted right then, and that would have been a soul that was coming back to occupy a soul that was given to the vehicle. It's a different soul for a returnee than you get for the first time. And they were given the first time soul when they were in the Moses camp, or maybe before that. Probably before that, because you go back to Abraham and because Jesus talked about Abraham as being one of the fathers of Judaism and Islam, actually, also, and Christianity in the sense of that that strain of thought, that thread, that branch on the next level tree of life, that extends into the human kingdom by incarnating as a leaf on that human kingdom tree. And the human kingdom tree is all the mind, all the experiences from the start of that, all those creatures that were in the beginning male and female, even before Adam and Eve. See, many Christians don't talk about this, but we came upon it actually while I was in the classroom and we were starting to study Scripture, which was after T left. Because Doe thought that there might have been another task for us to do, and there was. He needed to be who he is, the return of the same soul that was in the vehicle named Jesus. It wasn't Jesus, because Jesus was the name of the vehicle that was taken over and converted into a next level vehicle. So Jesus is a real person. But they can have more than one vehicle in the next level. I don't think Doe has more than one vehicle, but T can. T did, according to Doe. T had grown to operate more than one vehicle. And so they don't take over vehicles, human vehicles or space alien vehicles. They don't take anybody over. That's manipulation. They don't do that. They plant seeds of their thoughts that are little inklings of ideas, And if the soul, if the human pulls on that a little bit and says, yeah, I wonder about, look at all the stars out there. I wonder if there's more people out there, thoughts like that, of course, right? And maybe there's some truth to this UFO stuff, maybe the space aliens are among us, you can keep on going with it, of course, right? We can, the next level gives us events that stimulate those things, like the crash at Roswell and perhaps at Aztec. I have a reason for singling out those two because of the information that Tiendo provided us to read was about those two crashes. Now, they weren't saying those were the only crashes from the next level, but they did say that the Luciferians staged crashes after they did. Because the Luciferians, I don't think, knew that that was going to happen that way. Even though there was a crash in 1897 that Tiendo didn't talk about. And I wonder if that was, looking back on it, I started to wonder if that was like a John the Baptist coming ahead of time, right before Mark Twain was born. No, actually, when Mark Twain was already, I think he was born in the mid-1800s. And so I wonder if that was, because Mark Twain, was the one that said it was $5.75 to ride, it was the fare to ride the tail of a comet, ride on the tail of a comet to heaven. He made a movie, Captain Stormfield's Trip to Heaven. And Thomas Alva Edison produced the first movie of that, very short. I found it some years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I was looking for it, and I found it, and I downloaded it onto my computer, and that computer's died since. And I don't know if I have it on the backup anywhere. I don't think I do. But the movie itself isn't, it'd be fun to see it. I'd like to see it again. Because, you never can tell what kind of clues might be in it. The choices they made to what to film. Because, like I said, Tiendo taught that the next level gives movies ideas, gives people that can make movies ideas on what to do. And how to do them. And the best example of that is that Tiendo felt like The Sound of Music was the next level's doing to some degree. It doesn't mean that they didn't dictate everything about it. They just gave them some ideas that they knew would, and to make a movie of it would result in being clues to Tiendo that would be like an overview of their mission. It's actually kind of like an overview of Revelation chapter 12, now that I think about it. Because the end of Revelation chapter 12, which I actually do have on the screen here, so my video's not updating very fast. Oh, there it goes. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So if Mother Superior was T, who gave the task to Do to go into the human kingdom and become to determine whether she wanted to enter the nunnery or not. That was basically setting her up for a test. And so that could be seen as being like the Adam experience in some ways, but also the Doe experience, to where from that experience he gets to be born when he recognizes T, because he had the choice to not recognize T. I'm not saying that was really could ever happen, because we're not talking about he's an older member. So he's already a father, but he's still in the process of birthing the students that his father gave him, which is what Jesus talked about. So so the whole thing was organized by the father, which was the same individual that was Jehovah, and the same individual that was the Elohim. That the space aliens are trying to mask as being the Elohim in the Realians, in that movement. They're like a New Age Catholic Church, in my opinion. Where you got to give a part of your body to them, and not that, consume the body, and they consume it by taking a piece of your genetic code, and so they can make clones. I don't know, maybe the Catholics are behind that too. Who knows? But I know plenty of humans are into cloning humans. I'm sure of it. They're experimenting in ways that we don't know about. I mean, we know that Hitler was trying to do it, right? So why would it stop there? Because the Luciferian space aliens, they want vehicles that can be their servants. So they want vehicles that can think exactly the way they do. And they're not always together. Like the different, I don't know how many there are, Luciferian space alien fallen angels, but actually it looks like from Revelation 12, it looks like there's actually 7 heads and 10 horns. So that would be 17. Or maybe it's 24. Oh yeah, 24. Duh. 24 elders. Tiendo said that they were going to be replacing the Luciferians in their tasks. Because the 7 crowns upon the 7 heads. Well then, the heads, of course, would be the humans that the crowns are on. And the crowns would be the... Well, but I mean, it's the same thing. It could be discarnate, so they can be different. Yeah, I mean, there's a case for thinking that it's a 24 number. A case can be made, because a crown, in this context, is a diadem. Oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not in this case. Yeah, diadema. I was clicking the wrong word. And it's actually, it's like a blue band marked with white, which Persian kings used to bind on their turban or tiara, the kingly ornament for the head, which is different from the crown of the next level, which is Stephanos. I'm not going to go through that now. I've gone through that before on several occasions through the live streams and in my videos. So I think 24, makes sense as a possibility because of that 24 elders, which Tiendo's students did get down to the number 24. So before before they went public in 1994. I think it was down to 24, or was it 25? I'm a little bit confused about that. So I may be wrong about the 24. But even if it was 25 that we're talking about with T and Do, doesn't make this wrong as a prophecy fulfillment. So the next level puts these prophecies together. They plan them. They plan what's going to happen, and ahead of time. So it's fated in that sense. Not that they can't change their plans, but their plans are. They plan it, and then they put it into motion, real time, as it's happening, because they have the overview of the whole kingdom, of the whole planet, of the whole solar system. Who knows? As far as T and Do go, what we know is that T is the chief administrator of the earth. And Do is T's right-hand crew member for this task. Not that T can't have another graduate from a human kingdom doing another task somewhere else, which is kind of indicated that upon her head she's got a crown of 12 stars. So that would indicate, 12 stars would indicate that that she gave birth to 12. And so those would have been in the past being seen as archangels, because that's what Michael was. And Michael, the archangel, is actually a captain of angels, is actually what that means. It's actually a captain of messengers, a captain of crew members that have the messenger task. And they could have other tasks too, you could string along with that. But we know about the messenger tasks because that's how angels were depicted doing, bringing messages to the Old Testament prophets and to other people. And Michael was one of those that came to Daniel. Daniel was quoted by Jesus, and T and Do said that everything that Jesus said was true in the red letters of the Gospels. And so therefore you can, any of the people that Jesus mentioned in the past, like Moses and Zechariah and Enoch wasn't direct, but it was in the Gospel of Jude, and Jude was thought to be a disciple of Jesus, and so therefore you could say that Enoch was, and Do certainly paid attention to Enoch's writings more when the Dead Sea Scrolls came out, and there was stuff there from Enoch as part of it, and we started reading the book Seeing Christian Faith at that point, and felt like we got some insights as to what the real, which started actually, the Essenes started actually before Jesus came back. So, and there was said to be another older member, a teacher of righteousness, and that Jesus was actually sent by that teacher of righteousness to do the task of Jesus. Is kind of the implication of some of that material in the Dead Sea Scrolls that I remember reviewing when I was in the classroom in the 90s. And I went all over the place again, but I got to a few places. Psychiatric thing, I didn't get back to that. Or maybe I did, and now I'm forgetting whether I talked about it or I just wrote about it. Because I wrote about it right before I I logged on here to the live stream. Well, I'll just repeat myself then if I already talked about it. But I wondered if that rumor that got started of Doe being in the psychiatric hospital when he met T, is another way that it was said, might have been because of what I believe the fact is, that Doe wrote an 88 update, and he talked about it in Beyond Human tapes, and he talked about to the class with T present on 2 occasions, at least 2 or 3 occasions, in meetings. He said he met T in the hospital where T worked, and that T was substituting for another nurse, because normally she was in the nursery department, taking care of preemie babies, just like she was taking care of the preemie babies that were the students to the next level, and trying to keep them alive so they grow towards the next level membership. And I want to get back to Texas also, so someone can remind me if I go to the chat room and I forget, if you don't mind. But so I wondered if, because all Doe said about it was that he was visiting a sick friend. And so I never knew what kind of sickness it was that Doe was visiting. And I thought he was visiting with somebody else too. Somebody else was there besides Doe. I don't know why I had that impression, but I may be wrong about that. So, but then I started to think when I saw the psychiatric stuff, and it didn't make sense that he put himself into a treatment facility to get over his sexuality, attraction to men, homosexuality, gay. They didn't say gay in those days that I'm aware of, or LGBTQ. I didn't mean to say two T's. But so I wondered if maybe there was a psych ward in the nursery, because that doesn't make sense otherwise. Because how could they have met in a psychiatric hospital where there's a nursery and a psychiatric hospital? I think it could work the other way around. I think you could have a ward that was for the people that maybe were trying to kill themselves. I would suspect that was more the way it could work, logically speaking, using some common sense, which sometimes the common sense is the best depiction of what's most true in any given circumstance. But of course, we can't always tell what is common sense, because we're kind of anesthetized to some of the common sense by the human kingdom. Sexuality, Doe said, reduces our common sense. Indulgence in sexuality. It's not that it's evil. It's not like a moral thing, staying away from sex. It's that the members of the next level don't have sex. They don't have organs. They don't have for it. And so they don't reproduce. They don't make babies. They don't need them. They grow a vehicle when they need a new vehicle for some task or for some new members. They grow it on a vine, and So I thought, well, maybe the sick friend was somebody who was trying to commit suicide. You never can tell how the rumors can start. Somebody could actually just start at a blank. He's crazy, so he must have been in an institution. Let's just tell this to the press somehow, or this person somehow had this idea and said it to the press, and so then the press repeated it, and now it became fact for some people. Of course, that's the way. There's so much of the story about T and Doe that has been blown out of proportion and also misconstrued, and and distorted and diluted and combated against, fought against, to try to diminish it, and they can't diminish it. It doesn't work. As soon as people that were helped to be curious even about it by the next level, we're not even going to be curious about it if the next level isn't helping us, helping those vehicles be curious. But see, that's just the way the next level does it. They don't manipulate. They do things that they know from that spirit's growth in that vehicle, because they know the strains of humans, and they can follow the growth of spirit within the strains of vehicles. And each spirit becomes an individual spirit when they're outside the vehicle. They're growing uniquely, but they're growing off the programming of the spirits before them through their parents and the genetic code. And the genetics is not just the flesh genetics, it's also, Tiendo talked about it as our computer, which was the genetics code system of the mind of a vehicle. The mind, which is the you. The you being everything we've decided to make our own. So if we decided that we wanted to become a nurse, and so we started studying nursing, and we got some help from the discarnate world, maybe even from relatives that were nurses. Maybe that might be the reason why we wanted to become a nurse, because we had it in our spirit, in that trunk of that branch of the human tree, and so we gravitated to that idea, or a parent might have suggested it or something, or we saw something on TV, and so we got that idea in our heads, and then the next level can even send us nurse spirits to help us become a good nurse. Because they don't need to know what good nursing is in the human kingdom, because they're not in the human kingdom. So they use everything in the whole kingdom to help everything in the kingdom grow. And what Tiendo said right in the very beginning was, this time there's a light shining on this planet from the distant heavens. And that it's accelerating the growth of all life forms on the planet. So that means that the earth itself, the minerals of the earth, the solid material, is changing at a faster rate than it normally would have been changing had the next level not come close as they did in the 1920s to first plant the seeds in Tiendo's vehicles. And maybe a few students as well at that time. I don't think, I forgot the age of some of the members of the class, but I'm not going to try to think of that now. But so they that's enough about psychiatric, I think. But what about the going back to Texas and Mark Twain? Is an interesting story. I don't know if I've said that during the live streams. Well, see, when I was writing my book that I give away, and I also sell it on eBay under Tito Books. If you want the hard copy, it's a big, thick. It's about the size of a ream of paper, and And I'm not saying that it's actually a little book compared to Tiendo's book, because it's just my little attempt to try to show the evidence of the backside of the history of the next level's relationship with the human kingdom that Tiendo didn't need to put a focus on, because their students already were part of that history. And not that all the ones listening to this potentially aren't part of that same history too. Yes, it can be those souls that were with Jesus. It could be among the 70 that were with Jesus, among the 12. I doubt any of us are among the 12. Among the 70, among the 120, among the 5,000. I think it was 5,000, which were the numbers in the book of Acts that was talked about. And then after that too, because we don't know how many souls were planted then, or how many were saved from that experience. All right, well, it says that 144,000 will be saved from this experience. That's, I believe that, even though I don't remember Doe talked about that number. So I may be wrong about that. But in any case, let's see. Or Texas and Mark Twain. See, Mark Twain was Samuel Clemens, who took on the pen name of Mark Twain in his stories. He was actually a captain of a Mississippi riverboat. And when I found that out, I realized that I was looking for the definition of everything, related to Tiendo. So I looked up what Texas meant. And it took me 2 or 3 tries before I came upon one interpretation that said that it was the captain's deck of a Mississippi riverboat. And so I thought, whoa, the captain's deck of a Mississippi riverboat. And I had already determined by that point that Michael the Archangel, the captain of angels, was the same soul that was in Jesus, that was incarnate next. Well, next I guess would have been in Elijah, I think, and then Jesus. Because T is the one that said that Doe was incarnate in Elijah and Moses and Enoch and Adam and Jesus, and now is back. So Doe didn't, Doe might have recognized that when she said that it was true, but they knew that he wasn't Jesus because he wasn't the vehicle that was coming back, and so therefore that gave a reason to the reason why Jesus said that if anybody comes back in my name, and he knew his name was Jesus, don't believe them. Saying that they're Christ, don't believe them, because there's going to be false Jesuses, false Christs, false prophets. And those false ones will trick even the elect, even those that were designed to or nurtured to be able to receive the truth when it's shared with them, which would be most evident in the Christians. So I got distracted by the chat room. Maybe I should go into the chat room. No, I want to continue with the Mark Twain stuff because it's really interesting to me. So a Tejas, I guess, is, by some people's account, I didn't make it up. The captain. Okay, so the Texas then would be like the Mississippi Riverboat. The headquarters of the ship, and the ship would be America. The woman, they call ships women for some reason. Maybe that's some stupid male thing, but I don't know. But the human kingdom was considered the sea in the Old Testament times, and so you've got and the river also was depicted by Daniel, that there would be two individuals on with their feet. Well, maybe it was one individual with his feet over both sides of the river, one on the land and one on the water, is the way it was said in Revelations 12. Revelations what was that? What said that? Maybe it was 13. A stand on the sand and the sea. The sea being the human kingdom and the sand being the earth. But the earth in the spirit form. So, well, no, maybe not that way. Maybe that's the spirit form is the sea. The earth being the genetic code, though, maybe? No, I guess it means the mountain, the literal geography of standing on the sand of the sea. I believe means standing on the land on the Pacific Ocean, but the other foot is on the Mississippi River, and that was showing the distance. That was measuring the temple. Like it says in Revelations 11. It's given instructions to measure the temple. But don't measure the court. And so that's why it only goes to the Mississippi River, because the court is east of there, to the East Coast. And Tiendo talked about that, and I've said it many times for those that have listened to my, these broadcasts before. I'm sorry that's a repeat, but it's the truth, so it's always good to the ears, in my opinion. And that is that Tiendo always felt that the Mississippi River was like a dividing point to where they felt closer contact with the next level, older members, that they were trying to do the will of. I should say just older member. T is older member, which happened to be T, because T didn't, I think. I mean, well, I don't know if it might have been T's older member. I take that back. That's not right. I don't think Tiendo's older member was T. Although the reason I was saying that was because Doe said that T had set up all the rules of how they would awaken and like the pattern that they would go through. Before she came. And so it was ironic that, she was impatient in a sense, or less tolerant on getting next steps, because she wanted to move it ahead because she knew, instinctually, she knew there was more to do. Like she said about the reason why, at first, one of the things she said about the reason why it didn't happen exactly the way the humans translated apokataino to kill in Revelations 11, that they would be killed. And they would rise, repeat the Jesus experiment, and then the students would be picked up by a spacecraft. The reason it didn't happen that way is T said that the students weren't ready. Had they been ready to go then it could have happened that way. Even though they never dropped the idea, by the way, that they could leave with their vehicles, and they actually said in one of the documents in the Heaven's Gate book that they preferred to go by taking their vehicles with them. They really didn't prefer to lay their vehicles down. Doe went through a lot of talking with T, I'm sure, and talking with his helpers and the individuals in the crew that he could talk to better, and sometimes the whole class, especially after T left. Didn't happen before T left that he would use students as his check partners, but he took advantage of the same teachings that he was teaching us, that he wanted a check partner, and his older member was his check partner while T was in her vehicle. And he missed that terribly, but he rose to the occasion within days of T's leaving her vehicle. So it wasn't like he was wallowing in depression. And even the depression that he had, what little, if you want to call it depression, you could tell that it weighed heavy on him, that he had the tasks to finish without his older member, because he began to, as he said, he began to rely on T a lot. Well, totally, he relied on T. And anybody that wants to see their interface, I encourage you to at least listen to the Black Hawk tapes that I posted on my blog, my YouTube channel. Just search on Black Hawk in 2 words, I think I put it. And there's 3 videos I made that is the audio of the meetings that they gave while they were in Black Hawk. And I relate that to the wings in Revelation 12. How the woman is, and when they say the woman, they're talking about all the children of the woman as well. So that includes Doe and student body, of their student body. Because technically, because Doe recognized that T was his older member. So, see, and the woman was given in Revelation 12:14, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. So, now that was about 1982, I think, when the Black Hawk tapes were made. And so we were living in Amarillo, I think during part of that time, most of that time. And that's when we were in Amarillo, that's when we started the business called Astrologics. And in that business, I'm just giving you some of this history because I'm sure it's interesting, because everything about T and Doe is interesting. And and some of this, if nobody else talks about it, it's not going to survive. And so get on with it, Sawyer. So in Astrologics, what they did is they rented an office building, and that's actually when they bought a house too, which was really kind of strange, because they ended up not. We lived in it for a little while, some months, and then they felt like they got instructions to move, And moved away, and it was years later that they sold it, and I believe they said they regretted buying it. But it does show you that the act of buying a house wouldn't necessarily be out of the question for somebody to do now. You know, if they think that, you know, leaving all behind meant living on the street, which you could, of course you could be camping, but you could also go someplace and buy a house. You know, I mean, if you had the money for it, I guess, if you could afford it. But I'd recommend not going into debt because Tiendo were not in favor of that. They believed that you should be able to pay for, within your means, to pay for the things that you get. And I have to admit, I've been breaking that. It wasn't given to us as a procedure. It was saying that because the way that the credit system could glue you to the world, you know, and it does in some ways, because if you lose it, you can lose a lot of the things that, you know, you can't rent a car, or, you know, you can use a credit card and you can pay it off right away. That's what Tiendo did in the classroom. They had credit cards, but they paid them off right away, as I understand it. I wasn't the purser, so I didn't actually do that exchange. But I knew they had credit cards because Doe and helpers would fly places. And I think one time I was a partner to a purser, and we bought tickets. But I knew they had credit cards, you know. I don't think I had one though when they sent me out as an overseer of one of the groups of us. I had a cell phone and I had a compact portable computer in 1994 when they sent us out. And we had a little printer that was about a foot long, you know, the width of 8.5 by 11, I guess, piece of paper, a little bit more than that. But, you know, no bigger than not even a shoebox, half a shoebox size. We had that in the car and with the compact computer, and so we would design the posters and then print them out and then take them to a copy shop to, you know, make copies of them. And then we had a cell phone that was a huge piece of equipment, you know, like, you know, big, big. But that was only for emergency calls to Doe and helpers, which I used a few times. It wasn't an emergency, but if I had reason to check with them on something, I was with my partner, if we had reason to check with them on something. So, let's see, where was I? I was back to the Mark Twain, maybe. Well, we know about the 575. It was the price. I already said that, so I won't go through that again. But let's see if there's anything else with Mark Twain. Well, a lot of things he said are just like out of this world, like against religions. And I won't go any further with that. But I want to get back to David Icke a little bit, because although, you know, I can see the consistency with what Tiendo were teaching in terms of the Luciferians running the leaders of the world, because Tiendo said that they would go to the leaders of the world, to get attention and get them to build technology and so they could get off the planet. And so that they would go to the people that that had the most influence over people and money, and so. But where David Icke gets it wrong, well, I don't know if it relates to the way the eyes look like a snake's eyes. I don't know I don't know if it's not. I'm not saying it's not possible, okay, but I can't link that to anything Tiendo said, so I'm not going to try right now, because that would be using my mind, and it wouldn't be worth nearly what Tiendo, it's worth whatever it's worth when I'm talking about what Tiendo said. That's when it's worth something. And the most. Not that my mind it's a mix. I know that. That's the object. The object is to reduce the mix from next to no next level mind and a lot of human mind misinformation, and reduce the human mind down to nothing and increase the next level mind up to full. And when it reaches full to the judgment of the next level, that's when the individual's metamorphosis has taken place, at least enough to be taken into the next level and be rewarded with a crown of membership and a task, a position, a jobs to do on spacecrafts in laboratories that are the size of spacecrafts, or the size of planets even, potentially. So David Icke, another thing I talked about how regarding him, I'm not sure if it was him or it was somebody from the, what do you call it, that group of people that do interviews of David Icke and other people, like the Unicorn Media Group or something like that. I don't know, but I think them and David Icke also, I think I heard, talk about how the way we can affect change is by meditation. And meditation, from Tiendo's perspective, was certainly used. We had several meditations, and they were only given to us probably right before T left that same year, I think, as I recall. I can even see the craft I was in where T left a vehicle from in Dallas. And the meditations were, one of them was to sit quietly somewhere and not in any special position, but sitting. Not that you couldn't do this anytime, walking, talking, whatever you can do it any time you want if you can concentrate on it. But the way they taught it was to go someplace. We had a room at one point in one of the crafts, in a number of the crafts, we had a room that was for meditation. That actually started with the astrologics in 1982 around. That's when we started meditating, and they made a little altar, and that was actually for the public. We had the public come in there, and I'll get back to the meditation, but Tiendo, or so in a sense, Tiendo started the interface with the public again. I just realized that. You know, because, I mean, those criticized, well, those considered to be the, you know, the one that got off track after T left and started things that T wouldn't have done. That's what I think Andoti Frank said. I hope I'm not misquoting him, but I think that's approximately what he meant. And Doe became psychotic because of that. And maybe also other reasons, you know, maybe they would add that into it. You know, his homosexuality, he was distraught with that, which wasn't, that was stupid to say that. I mean, there was no evidence of that. So, there I go off again on another tangent. So I'll get back to, which one? Astrologics or David Icke and the reptilians and the other stuff that he teaches, the meditation. Yeah, the meditation. I definitely want to get back to that, even though I didn't I didn't dot the I on a few other things. I'll just keep on going. So the meditation, you sit there quietly. You didn't have to hold your hands in any specific way. They didn't give any instructions like that. And you'd imagine that the light from the next level was coming in through the top of your forehead, like where the pineal gland is. And they talked about the glandular system as you know, as centers of communication with the next level, I guess. I can't say too much about what they said about it, except that they said that the solar plexus area was also, I guess, related to whatever gland is over there. I don't remember now. But that you'd sometimes feel something in your solar plexus that was like radar, like your feeler. They even called it a feeler. And I have felt my solar plexus bouncing. Not too, I mean, fairly recently I've felt it bouncing, but sometimes I don't know if it's, you know, gas or what, you know, but I felt that also years ago. While I was in the classroom, I felt it a little bit too. And I don't remember it before the classroom, ever feeling that pulsating feeling in my solar plexus. Anyway, but so you're bringing the light in through your pineal gland, like into your head, and you're envisioning it going through every cell and healing that cell of infirmaries, whatever it is, physical, mental, whatever. You're healing it all. So I would very rarely get very far, you know, because it would take me that much concentration for me to actually feel like I was really feeling it going through every cell, you know. I was watching it like in my mind's eye, my third eye. So that we all have, I think, the mind of the vehicle. So that was one meditation. Another one was just to imagine yourself sitting at the feet of the chief. Christine said that there was a chief of chiefs, but that we wouldn't understand where that chief of chiefs came from until we became a member of the next level, a younger member of the next level. And then we would understand more about where that individual came from. And so, and that's around the time I mean, that's right around the time when Al Lodi made that painting of the airbrush drawing and painting of what an older member might look like. And but we didn't actually put that picture up anywhere to focus on it. So we weren't focusing, we weren't, meditating on a graven image. Because I think that's what it would be related to doing if you're, maybe that's why I couldn't get into it when I was going through my awakening before joining up with Tiendo, and I was experimenting with Sufis and meditating on the picture of Sri Chinmoy with a friend of mine who was a musician friend, and he was a disciple of Sri Chinmoy. But I don't know where Sri Chinmoy was, that he was a disciple of him. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was a remote, or maybe he was in Portland at the time, for all I know. It might have been. But I was trying to meditate on his picture. I was like, this is, I don't get anything from this. It just didn't make any sense to me to do that. So, let's see, any loose ends that come to mind. Let's go over the chat room. It's getting pretty heavy out here lately. Yeah, I've been talking about that in the beginning of this broadcast, and then, yeah. I'm very interested in rebuilt the history of Heaven's Gate, and your transmissions are really useful to me. Great. Now, if you ever write anything up and you want to, run it by me, I don't know that I have the time anymore to look at it, but I certainly, if you could put it somewhere where other people could look at it, to be like a check partner, you could use each other like that in this classroom that we have where we're all in different places. It's still a classroom. We're all, I'm not saying I'm the teacher in the class, I'm not. But I can facilitate my experiences with Tiendo, and if that becomes your teachings by going back and primarily by studying everything Tiendo said, that's the greater things we can do. Of course, do as much of that as possible, even though that's harder. I can understand wanting to compile the Heaven's Gate timeline. And actually, I have a timeline on my blog. So you might want to look at that and add to it. And it's not a great timeline. But it's not just about Heaven's Gate. It's a timeline of what I thought was the initial obvious signs of the next level's physical appearance on the Earth, around the United States in particular, which I think is kind of like at the birth of the nation of the United States, but is most clearly depicted, I think, by the first UFO flap in the mid-1800s, which what you saw coming from the mid-1800s was the equal rights movements, of the suffrage movement of the women trying to get equal rights, and then the health seekers. The health seekers yearbook started in Arkansas. Around that time, we had it in the classroom, the health seekers yearbook, and it's like a whole Earth catalog, but it's all about health and articles about it, and I think that's what led to Dr. Christopher's work and the work of Arnold Ehret that led to the Transfiguration diet. And Arnold Murray, I think, was operating a preacher, a Christian preacher, was preaching out of Arkansas, and he's the one that opened that I noticed first that Doe first talked about how there were humans before, well, not humans, because humans only came to be after the fall of Adam and Eve, who were real people, parts of the first experiment, the start of the experiment. But there were humanoid creatures before that were male and female. And Pastor Murray, who Sue Rody mentioned in his exit video, was the one that showed that to us, because we were watching the broadcasts. Doe would watch with us over satellite dish. We were living outdoors in with generators in tents, and we'd be watching the bulletin boards, and well, not the bulletin boards. We'd be watching the satellite broadcasts from a bunch of evangelists, Trinity Broadcasting, and Jim Baker, and the 700 Club, and all the PTO, is that one? Praise the Lord, yeah. Well, PTL, Praise the Lord. All these groups, you know, Kenneth Copeland, Jimmy Swaggart, the other one that Suri mentioned in the exit video, I keep on forgetting his name now, L.A., out of L.A., who would always say, am I boring you now? I remember Doe taking notice of that. He got a kick out of that. He was fond of those, a number of those individuals he was fond of, and but he said that, you know, a lot of times they're saying the right things. They're saying all the right things a lot of times, not all the time, but they don't know what they're saying actually, because they're only saying it relative to 2,000 years ago, and there's a lot of updates that clarify what was said 2,000 years ago. So that what was said 2,000 years ago isn't so general. It's more general. You get more specific the more real you get. I think that's the way it seems to work. And got off track, but I'll go back to the chat room. I would like to ask you, how was a typical day with the crew from morning to night? Thank you. It was just as if you were working for a corporation that you were living with the members of that you worked with, and so you didn't go home. And you were doing all the same things a human family does, making your food and bread and cinnamon rolls, and you know, we had departments, and so you had the Neutral Lab, you had the Yeast Lab, you had the Fiber Lab, which was the laundry, you had the Impro Lab, which was for all the improvements of the maintenance of the house and the cars. You had the well, we had the Restoration Lab, which was actually a swimming pool, an indoor swimming pool in San Antonio, in the house we had there, the craft we had there, and so So everybody was on a schedule. And when we were, see, it was different when we were living outdoors for those 3.5 years, approximately. It was 1,260 days, like in Revelation 12 talks about. The first time to the wilderness was to Wyoming. And between Wyoming and Texas, we would go back and forth, traveling in a long stream of cars. You know, we traveled in 3 groups, and each group was like 6 or 7 cars, because we were close to, 80 people sometimes at that time. So we called the house we lived in a craft, but it didn't look like a craft, a spacecraft, because Tindo were trying to acclimate us to the thinking of members of the next level that they are on a craft. They know they're on a craft, so that we're actually preparing our mind for being on a spacecraft by putting it into effect in our body. We didn't. I remember when we used to be sent out on tasks when we were living outdoors, even, and we'd be in the car driving. And I remember imagining that I was in a spacecraft and how it would feel the same. Just driving through the countryside. I'm talking about straight roads. You're just going straight for miles and miles and miles in Wyoming. Because we had to go to, I remember one time I was feeling that, and we were driving to Cheyenne for some task that TNO gave us to do. But, So the schedule would be like, if you had an out-of-craft task, your schedule would be different than somebody who had an in-craft task. Out-of-craft task was a task working in the world, cooking or computers or working as a receptionist or, whatever it would be. We had all different kinds of tasks. We mostly started in the restaurant industry, because Tindo didn't want us to take jobs that we had that would reflect back on our experience in the world, until they felt like those individuals that could do that without reverting to what they wanted while they were in the world, or the behaviors and ways in the world, to where it wasn't troubling them. If they had an easy time blocking that out so that it wasn't an issue for them, we some had an easier time than others, because the overcoming is a little different for everybody. And then they wouldn't assign you to do something that you were going to have trouble with. And so that's why we used middle names during that time period, or nicknames. But we had to give our real Social Security number because we wanted to do everything legit. And we filed taxes every year. The pursers did it, actually. I didn't do my own. I just signed it. And we signed over our checks. We cashed them, and then gave the funds, signed over the funds to the group, to the pursers. And so my schedule would be, I was an out-of-crafter. So for a long time, we got up at 5:55 a.m. The reason we arrived at that, Doe arrived at that, T and Doe, I don't know exactly. I can make some guesses, but it had to do with the structure they set up of so we had a system of checking for service, and so every 12 minutes, was actually every 11 minutes, you'd stand on the spot in what was called Central, which was just 2 people, 2 members of the class that you took turns doing, sitting at a table, like a folding table, and they had a phone, a telephone outside the craft, a landline, and sometimes they had an intercom. If T and Doe were in the same craft, then we had an intercom to them in their quarters, which happened a few times. over those years. And then and then they had a spindle there on Central, where if you had a note to go to T&O, you would put it on the link spindle. They called it LNKS. You took the I out of the links, because they were the chains of mind that were our links to the chain of mind that goes to the Chief of Chiefs through all the older members. And so we'd stand there for a minute facing the two individuals that were not facing us. Those two individuals were facing the craft. Like if it was in the tent when we had it, they were facing T&O's tent. Was actually, T&O didn't have a tent when I was in the same camp with them. There were individuals in the camp that were helpers when T&O were living in a tent as well for that first year or so, or two, before they got a trailer, a little tiny trailer that would sleep two people. And so when they got the trailer is when we were living outdoors in northern Colorado and southern Wyoming, in the same area where we first went in Wyoming, at the Vita Vu area, or across the highway from that. There was a ranch over there that they rented space from. Anyway, so if they were parked at a distance from us, they came up with the distance, and we weren't allowed to go to the back side of their trailer. They wanted to have privacy on the backside view of their little trailer, and we weren't allowed to come up to the trailer for any reason. But if somebody did it, T&O they wouldn't have scolded them. They would have listened to what they said, and then they would have tried to help the person with what they wanted to be helped with. And then they might have said later that was the kind of thing that you could have just wrote a note about, instead of stopping us from what we were doing. Because we got that lesson, one of the first lessons we got in the camp in Wyoming was to not assume what's on our mind when we approach somebody else, whether it was a classmate or whether it was T&O, to not assume what's on our mind is more important than what's on their mind. Even though they might be outside cooking something on their stove, outside their tent. So the procedure would be that if you had something to report to them, or you had reason that you wanted to talk with them, that most of the time would have been something that you went through the chain of command, so to speak, to clear by going through the group leaders that were the helpers of T&O, that would go to T&O's camp every day to see if there's to bring them notes and bring them, updates about what students were doing, and to be their eyes, so to speak, and then their ears, and then T&O would base what they would do that day on, giving us instructions to go to town or something to buy supplies. But anyway, so they're in the trailer, and so if they wanted somebody to come up to the trailer, they would signal to Central by putting up one finger or two fingers if they wanted two people. Then we could see them through the window. They didn't shout it. They just they held it up in the window, and but they didn't do that through the night. Or if they did, they turned on a light, I think, before they did it. Or, because we didn't shine lights on their trailer. But we were up all night doing that. We called it night watch, to where the two people that were on Central, instead of being on Central, they were on night watch for an hour, watching the heavens. But sometimes T&O would signal us while we were on night watch, And that was always pretty special, or they'd say, "Are you seeing anything?" Somebody, even though we were reporting, we were writing down things that we were seeing, streaks, things that we thought maybe were satellites, things that had this wobbly look to them that went very fast, and then different speeding streaks, and different rates of speed, and different directions that they would go in, and some would have look like a meteor, and some would look like they had no trail at all behind them, no smoke at all, or anything like that. So we saw a lot of stuff, and so everybody would get to read that every night, every day, and read what was seen the previous day by all the night watch crews. So I'd get up at 5:55 in the morning, and the first thing I would have to do is, depending on my schedule, was go take a shower, which in the campgrounds was a sponge bath in the tent, standing in a basin, and then holding our head over another basin, or standing on a towel and just holding our head and face over a basin. And we do all our chores there for the brush your teeth and comb the hair, because we had hair at that time. It wasn't real long, because I cut my hair when I joined. I had long like this now, and when I joined, and so though we had all kinds of procedures to do everything. So the object was to follow all the procedures. Okay, but we didn't have somebody watching us all the time, and especially in the bathroom. In the rest, we called it the bath chamber, actually. It wasn't the bath lab. It was the bath chamber. And the rest chamber was it wasn't the rest lab, it was the rest chamber. And they changed the names, ended up being because of associations that we would make with the terminology that we learned while in the human kingdom, that could trigger thoughts about things that we did around those associations of those things. And so that was a way of helping us. And at the same time, we were using only the terminology that T and Do were giving us to replace it. So therefore we were following their mind, their instructions, their words. Exactly. And that was becoming then our mind. And that's how we take in the Holy Spirit, by doing the will, the behavior and ways that includes the thinking of the members of the next level through the words, and includes the words. So that's why that's consuming the bread from heaven, and it would actually deplete dough. So we were actually depleting his vehicle. So that's where Jesus said, "I am the bread. You're going to consume my bread, my body." And so we were consuming Do's body by drawing his mind from us, by trying to follow all the procedures. It would go to Do first, because Do was our immediate older member, and then the draw from Do that would result from our draw on him would go to T, and that's how we'd get next steps. And then they'd get next steps together, and then they'd compare what they got and the ideas and the points of view that they got, the perspectives that they received, that they would pull on those perspectives, and they would get more and more ideas surrounding those. That's one perspective. Like, for instance, one perspective was that humans didn't all have souls. When they first said that, they said, this might not be totally accurate, but it works for right now. Actually, they didn't tell us that at first, that it might not be accurate. They first, well, maybe they did. I think what they first said was that all humans don't have souls. And then it wasn't, you know, maybe even in the same meeting where they ended up saying that that we don't know that this is 100% accurate. They said that about discarnates as well. They said that that this works for now. The idea that discarnates are the dead humans are influences. They first called them influences on us, and so let's see. So I do the bath, and we had 11 minutes to do the bath because we had to do our check. The way the bath was scheduled was so that it was during the time that we were supposed to be at Central offering our service to T&O, because like I said, you know, if they put up a sign of a 1, then the two individuals that, one of the two individuals that was sitting on the desk there would point to one of the 4 people that was standing there on Central each minute, and that person would then move quickly to the trailer, and we would run. People didn't run initially, and sorority used to run all the time, and you know, and some of the classmates would, I guess, find fault with him for doing that. I don't think it was any of the ones that ended up graduating. I think it was kind of, I could think of a couple dropouts that I think were making fun of him a little bit in that regard. But I didn't, but it was intimidating a little bit. His, but I ended up doing the same thing. I ended up running, you know, but not you. You Tiendo told us that it was okay to move quickly. What they would say was move quickly. They didn't tell us to run, but they said that you wouldn't like run as fast as you can. You because Tiendo always said that. Well, Do always said that. We were always trying. Well, Tiendo both said that we were trying to do our tasks quickly and thoroughly, and with flexibility in some ways, and with thoroughness was another key word that they were teaching, so that we would, you know, like if we were writing something, we would try to put all the grammar in there, that we, you know, try to use the right words, you know, make sure that every word says what we want it to say, you know, and is accurate. And I remember Norodi, who was an editor in the World. She worked as a manager in Texas Instruments in the Dallas area, I think it was. And, you know, they would go through every word that Doe would write. Doe asked her to do it and correct him on things that, you know, were maybe could be misconstrued in a certain way. So Doe took advantage of the talents that his students had. And that's the way the next level is. The next level don't do everything for their crews. They just give the instructions, and they give a certain amount of instructions that they know that if they put those into motion, and then the questions that come from that, they will already have experience with, that they can work out between the crew members on what you know, things that they can do within the instructions that they got. You know, it's like an undercover operation. Tiendo always compared their coming like an undercover operation, like a thief in the night. You know, it's undercover. You're going into enemy territory, and you're given a certain amount of information that can get you to where you need to go in order to accomplish the task that you're given. But you don't know how the humans are going to respond to that. In this case, you don't know how the students are going to respond to the lessons from the next level. And you don't know how the Luciferian space aliens, well, you do kind of know what they're going to do. They're going to try to distract the students in any way possible. But those Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls are actually assigned to the students to be boogers. That's what they, Tino always had this unique terminology that sometimes sounded even silly, and we did have silly time a few times in the craft, but where we just came up with silly things. And I remember sang a song. It was called "Under the Spreading," and you use your hands too. Under the spreading chestnut tree, and you hit your chest with your two hands. And then you hit your head with, as for your head's a nut, with two hands, and then you spread your hands open wide as a tree. Under the spreading chestnut tree, with my banjo on my knee, I'm as happy as can be. Under the spreading chestnut tree. Anyway, so we ended up singing that song with them during the silly time that we had a couple of times. But then I ended up singing that song some other times when I was with my partner, we were washing a car or something. And we would get silly. So silliness was actually part of the classroom. They felt like they were silly, and there was a dot. I didn't put a dot on an I that when we were consuming from Doe, in other words, when we were receiving his mind by putting it into action, by thirsting for what's the next step was. That was one way they would have us try to pull in the next step so that T and Do could get it, because they needed to give it away in order to get it. So in order to get their next step, that's the way it works. And so we needed to draw on them, their mind, by doing the things that they had already given us, and also asking for what's next for us. And the teaching, they didn't teach us to ask them what was next for us in our silent mind. Actually, there was no procedure for talking to anybody in our silent mind, but before that, it was before we knew that T and Do were our teachers, we had fully committed to it. The procedure was to project your asking to the stars, and so that the Luciferian space aliens wouldn't be able to be imposters coming to you to try to give you answers or try to be your Jesus to you, because there's a lot of people that in the discarnate world, and the space aliens would love to be Jesus for you if you pray to Jesus. That's why Jesus didn't teach to pray to Jesus. He said pray into the heavens. And look at all the people that are just praying to Jesus all the time, and they're not praying to God. They're not praying to the older member, the Father, T. So asking for the next step is congruent with, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. And I'm on earth, so I want your will to be my will, is what that's saying. Like the same like Jesus said, to be my disciple, you need to deny yourself. So you can't have an ego and get it on the spacecraft. You can't want to be special and get on that spacecraft, because they don't want people that want to, or you can't want to be seen as special, and you won't get on the spacecraft. Because that was one of the things that T told me that would keep me off the spacecraft, wanting to be seen as special. And And then they gave me tasks that made me look special, like overseer. So like, what a way to face you with your own demons, right? Which happens now too, in a sense. You know, I get to seem special by individuals that know that this information is special, and so therefore this vehicle is delivering that information, trying to pass it on, and so I'm looking special. But I don't really get off on it in that way. But I do know that I have an ego that still likes to be seen as being special, so I've got to overcome it. I know that more from the music that I do, like on the street and stuff, you know, where you know, I have this air about me that knows that I'm going to start playing and it's going to sound good, you know. And it doesn't mean that I always does sound good, and it doesn't mean it always sounds good to everybody, of course not. But I've gotten enough compliments and I've made enough money on the street, you know, that I have confidence that I can produce sounds that most people are going to think are nice music. And so I've got a little bit of an ego about that. But I also know that that can be taken away from me easily. And I've seen that happen to where I couldn't, like I was playing with a band or something, and I couldn't stay in tune. I couldn't stay in the key that they were playing in, and even though it was not a hard key to play in. And so it's like, you know, or I could have a problem with my finger, so I couldn't play the flute. I knew that it could all be taken away from me. So I actually gave up the flute and trying to progress in that way, which at the same time I was awakening to trying to be of service to T and Do more in the early 2000s. I was traveling all over the place trying to, well, enough about me. Let me get back to in the classroom, because that's more important. But trying to figure out where I was. Where was I? Well, I'll go back to the craft, and maybe I'll get to the other place later. But if I can continue this for a little while longer. But so then the people that had out-of-craft tasks, obviously they didn't work in the neutral lab because they needed to be prepared to go to their tasks if they're to be at their job at 8 in the morning or 7 or whatever, you know, to leave. And we carpooled, and sometimes I dropped off other people at their jobs, but we would sit down to the first experiment. We didn't call it breakfast. We called it first experiment, second experiment, and third experiment. And sometimes there were snacks. After the third experiment, there was a snack. And sometimes there was a snack between first and second experiment, I think. No, maybe even one between first, second, and third. Maybe, but there was no more than that, unless T and Do came back special and you know, brought us ice cream or something. We would have ice cream on occasion. It wasn't that, you know, it was, you know, pretty often when we were on that kind of a diet. When we were on a mucusless diet, we didn't have ice cream at all. But we made our own ice cream using, without dairy. We made it with bananas and frozen bananas, actually, and fruit, like strawberries. We made strawberry ice cream. And there'd be chunks of strawberries in it. We blended it. We actually had one of those champion juicers that we would run through, which we also used for our juicing. We did a lot of juicing in those years starting pretty close to when after T left her vehicle. Yeah, because there was that same craft in Dallas where we got a Macintosh, the first Macintosh that came out. And we started using whatever desktop publishing tools they had. I wasn't doing it, Authority was doing it. He was primary on that, designing the book. And the writing of the book was done by the Transfiguration Diet by Doe and mostly Livodi and Jan Odie, I think. But they might have consulted with other students. Well, we were all used as guinea pigs, for sure, on the first diet that we went to. That was like a fasting diet, which was Dr. Christopher's mucusless diet, which was related to Arnold Ehret's mucusless diet. And so there was that was a no flesh, no heavy proteins, they called it. Doe called it heavy protein, flesh foods. No dairy, no eggs, no carbohydrates, except for natural plant carbohydrates like avocados and bananas. A lot of bananas we ate. We ended up eating nut butters for protein. We made our own nut butters, cashews and almonds and filberts, and tahini. We bought tahini. After that diet, we ended up having tahini, and we're having a meal out of bananas and tahini. I would eat 6 bananas with a couple tablespoons of tahini, I think it was, and that was a meal, like a lunch. And during one part of our dietary program changes, T and Doe felt like changing diet, or Doe felt, because T wasn't in her vehicle when he was talking about this, that that changing diets every once in a while is good to help the immune system, instead of getting in a rut, staying the same all the time. And so we went back and forth, and of course that put people to the test as well. Everything put people to the test, and that's one of the things that I definitely want to get into more and more, is how the filters of helping people come to determine whether they were really committed 100% or not. That's what it was all about. We didn't know what 100% was. I didn't know what 100% was until I was faced with it by choosing to do the things that T and Doe gave us to do or not. Okay? If I wasn't doing everything they gave us to the best of my ability and asking my partner to help me do that, that's what the partners were there for, to help us commit 100% and follow all the procedures exactly the way they were given. And all the procedures weren't like written in stone that you can only do it a certain way. Well, sometimes it was you can only do it a certain way, like measuring cayenne pepper. Okay, you would, or any grain like that, not grain, any granular substance like salt or even sugar. You took your measuring utensil and then you held your straight edge knife over it, and then you held it at about a 45-degree angle, because that would make it so that it didn't push so much out of the spoon or the cup when you were measuring. Or like it was flour, it would take some of that cup away if you were measuring a cup of flour. So we did have procedures like that were exact, and they were meant to be exact, and your check partner would watch you actually do the measurement and verify that every ingredient of what we called the formula was going into the recipe. That was the formula. And the formula was written like mashed potatoes was represented by MP. And then it would say mashed potato MP plus I mean, we did have hamburger at one time, not during the mucusless diet, but when in the campgrounds originally. So, there'd be like an H for hamburger or ground beef. I don't remember what it was for ground beef, actually, at that time. We did have some hamburgers then and some ground beef in the spaghetti sauce. And, or it might say pasta, PA. So MP, well, you wouldn't have potatoes and pasta together, no. We never had that. But MP and corn, CO, equals body changes. And so what that meant was that by following these procedures and thinking about this as an experiment, and that the product was actually fuel that was going to fuel your vehicle so that your vehicle could learn the lessons and be the clearest and the most, the keenest, thoroughest, not compared to anybody else. We weren't in competition, even though part of the overcoming was to overcome that feeling of competition with others. I mean, we saw them doing things better than we were doing them. And so some of the procedures we had were like, okay, we had tasks, and the task was to go get an oil change on the car, okay, or go get the car inspected. And so two members of the group would sign out a car, sign out the keys, because the keys were kept in a box, and they were locked up at night. Pursers locked them up somewhere. I don't even know where they were. And because they didn't want somebody that decided to leave the craft to leave and take a car with them, because the cars were valuable to us. People did leave in the middle of the night, so you could see that there was definitely good reason for that. So anyway, we'd sign out a car, and then you'd go drive to the Jiffy Lube or wherever you were going, Midas, to get a brake job or whatever, inspection. And then some things would happen sometimes that you didn't anticipate. And so, like they might say, okay, well, when we were doing this, we also found out that this was wrong. And so you really need to have this done safely. And sometimes we didn't have access to calling back to the craft. So we'd have to make a choice on our own. And if we could call back to the craft and ask them, that would be the procedure. And if the craft could get in touch with T&DO, then they would forward that request to T&DO. But if T&DO were out of pocket, they were traveling somewhere, which they did frequently, and we didn't have a way to get in touch with them because we didn't have cell phones with them, then they would call in during those trips sometimes, but for messages and things, and then that's when they would find out. So then you'd have to make decisions of your own, and you try to come with your partner, come to a decision you think T&DO would have you make, and the helpers at the crafts would help you with that, because but if for some reason you couldn't get in touch with the craft, for some reason, then you had to make the decision yourself, and so you took a chance on the positive. That's where that expression came from. It came from T&DO. Take a chance on the positive, but also, if in doubt, don't. So you take a chance on the positive, but if in doubt, don't. So it's kind of an interesting balance there, right? And it's like, and that's the way you can kind of, you don't want to take, you're taking a chance on a positive means also that you're not going to do anything that you can't reverse unless you're positive. You wouldn't lay down your life unless you were positive that you were doing it for T&DO, and that they supported you in doing that. And I could see that right now for anybody that would consider that, uh, uh, they should, plead with T&O to see if that's right for them to do. I can't deny that Doe left that door open. I don't know how long that door is open for, but as far as I'm concerned, that might be a cop-out for most people that might choose to do that. And I've been approached by people several times now that said they wanted to lay down their life, and they were running it by me. And, I didn't know whether it was a setup, by the lower forces to get me to, approve that or what. But I just told the truth, and that was that if you're trying to escape something from the world, then you're trying to escape your lessons. And then even if you did lose your vehicle, you would have to be brought back. And right now is your opportunity, is all our opportunities to do the best job we can do with the vehicle we have. We need our vehicles now, because these vehicles are the way that we grow. We can't grow without these vehicles. And so this wouldn't be the time for anybody that crosses the mind of. And the Luciferians will play with people with that, to have them think that, why don't you just do that, because they'll do anything to get you out of the classroom, actually, to learning your lessons. So I told those individuals that I don't think that, I think before they do that, I think they should try to practice the behavior and ways that T&O taught, and try to stand up for them, tell other people about them, disseminate their information, talk with people, about who you believe them to be, because that's how you're going to demonstrate to the next level that you want to go all the way, even though you're going to get consequences for doing that. People are going to roll up their eyes about you, and they're not going to want to have anything to do with you. Some of them, and some of them are going to tolerate you and say, just don't talk about it with me, but I still like you as a friend, and that's fine, because you give people time also to have their own experiences, because humans are sometimes growing faster than members of that are believing in T&O can grow. That's why look at Dave Odie. She was in the class for a matter of months, and Doe felt like she was was approved to lay down her life with everybody else. Now, that wouldn't have been an easy decision for Doe to make. I mean, he would have felt like, he would have had to feel like T was definitely behind that option, because he saw to it that even though he knew that some of those that were making that choice would have to come back and finish their overcoming. So I don't know if that was her or not. Might have been. But the fact that she made that first step, I believe she received the crown of a next level vehicle and some tasks for the next level on a crew. I don't have any doubt of that. Because you don't know where that soul came from. That soul could have came from a dropout, possibly. I don't know, because T said that everybody who came would leave. Would go back. Everyone that came would go back. So that looks like the 144,000 came and are sealed during the seventh seal opening affirmation period. So everything else will potentially be recycled from that. But recycling might also mean saving these spirits. Well, it does indicate that the masses of people are all also in the school sometimes. They're not all in school because it depends on whether they've been trying to grow or not. When they're getting lessons and they're moving on from those lessons, they're not making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, and expecting to get a different result. The old Einstein thing, right? Definition of insanity. I probably didn't quote him right, but same idea, I think. So that brought me back to where I was talking about how even when you're a member of the next level, even to the degree of you're in the next level, in a crew, on a spacecraft, and you might be one that needs to come back to the human kingdom, but you're getting experience working in the next level. For the older members. The older member isn't observing everything you're doing all the time, everything that crew is doing all the time. But there's a reporting system in place in that crew. Now, Tindo didn't say that about the reporting system, but they did say that, I'm just saying because they were teaching us that to make those reports. I think I can assume that they're teaching us that because that's the structure of the next level, that the younger members in the crews report to the older members in some way. And the older members might be like overseers of the spacecraft that they're reporting to. And maybe those overseers then have instructions on when something that they've experienced before is different enough that they want to check with their older members. But otherwise, no, they're on their own in their spacecraft doing their tasks. And who knows how long. And those tasks, according to the Tiendo movie, would be going to humans that are going through things in their life that are difficult, and they're asking help of the next level, or they want to know the truth about a circumstance, or they want to know what their will can be, what the next level's will is for them. And so they've asked that question, and so now the next level is watching them in their lives and looking for things that they can stimulate so that that individual will get a lesson and recognize that it's an answer to their request for the will of the next level. Because when the next level does something, that when they give you an idea, it's not just coming with that idea of, okay, make a movie that's like this, name The Sound of Music. Okay, let's say that's what was an idea given to a human. Okay, if that human was asking the next level, the highest source they could reach, when they receive that idea, they also get the recognition that that might be, not certainly, but that might be answer to their question, answer to their request of doing the will of the next level, the next step for them. They may not get that signal that way. I know I get that signal sometimes, and I started getting that signal in the classroom. I ran it by Doe one time, and all he said was, that might be something T would say, because Doe gave us instructions after T left, quite a number of years, in the 90s, I think. He said that you could actually, it was around 1990, well, it could have been 88, 90, 89, 90. He said, before that, it wouldn't have been appropriate to address T. Like, you wouldn't write a note to just T, or you wouldn't write a note to just Doe. It was always to Lynx, or T and Doe, both of them. What? My daughter's yelling something.
What?
Nothing. I thought you were yelling at me.
I was.
All right. Well, I'm still doing this live stream. All right. You can be sorry if you want to. So, I got distracted now by that. Where was I? Well, how they don't look over our shoulder when we're as humans or as even as class members in Tiendo's classroom. We did have a time though where we had eyes. They were called eyes, and that was two individuals were assigned from among the group, and it wasn't special individuals. Everybody took a turn doing it. Would be just standing, observing what everybody else in the craft was doing. Because we weren't like spread out necessarily. A lot of times, sometimes we were all in just one big room, and sometimes one person that was doing the eyes was in one room, and then the other one was in another room, and then they would walk around to the different rooms if there was multiple places where people would be. But see, we didn't do eyes like if you were assigned to eyes task, and you were on, and some of us class members were members of the Nutrilab crew on duty at that time, when the eyes crew was happening. You wouldn't go over to the Nutrilab and then watch what was happening in the Nutrilab crew. Because what you were watching for was any individuals that might be breaking procedure. And then you would do, and then whatever it was, you would write it down, and that would go right directly to Tiendo. And sometimes the people that were doing the eyes work got the lessons, and the person that did whatever they wrote about didn't get any lesson from it because they misinterpreted what that person was doing, and because it wasn't that clear all the time, even though we had books and books and books full of procedures. Those grew over time, and the eyes task happened in the early '80s, and they had a clipboard. So they would be writing the clipboard, but see, that was the way it was designed to be, right from the beginning, that your check partner was going to be your eyes, to mirror back to you your vibration or what you were saying or your facial expressions, if there weren't facial expressions that were given to us as from the members of the next level. Like, for instance, we were taught to be restrained with our emotions. Not that you couldn't have emotions. You could laugh, of course, but you wouldn't just go, ha, big old laugh, like that. You would have a restrained laughter, and you could hear people laughing in the background in the Tiendo videos. And that was all the kind of laughter, the level of laughter. You didn't want to go overboard, and you wanted to have a clear countenance. So a pleasant countenance was the way that Tiendo would describe it, so that you weren't looking like you were depressed, you weren't looking like you were happy, you weren't looking like you were sad. You were Joe Vanilla. And that to get that countenance, they gave us little routines that we would do when we would get up in the morning, and we'd jump around, do calisthenics, and try to get the blood going, so that we weren't like droopy in the mouth. I think that's the way Tiendo described it sometimes. Down in the mouth, yeah, it was one of the ways they described it. How come you're so down in the mouth? I don't know. I never heard them say that actually that way, but they described it that way. But I got a lesson one time where Doe actually came to me in person and said that I need to work harder on my countenance, on my facial expressions, because certain classmates thought that I was angry with them, that I was partners with. And I wasn't angry with them. But they thought I was, and I get that some now too. People just don't know how to take me because I don't have a lot of facial expressions. And so he told me to work on it. And so I guess, if I do have some facial expressions, then I'm doing a good job to overcome just being someone that looks like the disturbed. It'd be different. He didn't want me to just, put on a smile. He didn't want me to put a fake smile on. He didn't describe what I was to do. So that's the idea. What T and Do would give us, they would give us what they felt was instruction to give us on any subject. Do was trying to give us what he thought T would give him. And he had a lot of examples with T, because he had a hard time being T's partner for the beginning. I talked about that in the last broadcast as well. I talked about a lot of these things in the last broadcast, but I know I've also brought some new things in. So let me go back to the chat room. Yeah, see, I didn't get from morning to night. The individual that asked for a itinerary, kind of typical day. We would go down at we called it going down, and we actually, this is good. This came up because this is part of the classroom, was overcoming sleep likes and dislikes, I guess. They didn't put it that way. They didn't actually say what sleep was a like and a dislike. Food was a like or a dislike. Food was not an addiction. Sex was an addiction that we would have no part of. Food was not an addiction. But we have likes and dislikes that we needed to overcome. And also like pertaining to how full we wanted to be, what foods we liked, what foods we didn't like, how we would eat, how long we would take to eat, because meals were all designed to be 20 minutes for a meal. And something I meant to say before that just got reminded of was that in terms of being quick about doing our tasks and running and stuff like that, like running up to the trailer to get sometimes there would be to get something that they were returning to somebody, and they would say, okay, bring this to even Odie or just Odie or whatever, whoever it was. But, and so then you would move quickly to bring that item to them, and then you go on with your tasks instead of going back to Central, because usually that took longer than it took to, or if you did it so fast that you could get, your minute hadn't expired, then you could go back to Central and stand there again with the other 3 individuals that were standing on Central. And so, anybody that joined this and doesn't know what I'm talking about will have to go back and listen to it if they want to know what it is in this broadcast, in this live stream. But I dotted that I, and now I lost where I was. Let's see if I can get back there again. Nighttime, rest chambers. Going down, sleep, they didn't really have a label for it that I remember, you know, like, so, but what they did was, they started us on a pattern of, before this point, we were required to get 8 hours sleep, and sometimes we had 9 hours sleep a night, and sometimes we had 8 hours and a nap time, and sometimes the nap time was longer than other nap times. You know, and T&O would treat it, you know, it would change. That would all be, that was mostly in the campgrounds. When we got into houses, that's when they started to experiment with, one experiment was sleep down 2 hours, up 2 hours. Down 2 hours, up 2 hours for everybody in the craft. So, but then after that went on for, probably weeks, just, you know, less than a month, I think. He changed it to 6 hours down and 6 hours up. 6 hours down and 6 hours up. And then that lasted for a little while, probably even less than the first stage lasted. And then and T said that she didn't like the way our brains were operating on only 6 hours of sleep, some of us. And so then they made it into a minimum of 6 hours. Well, first it was a minimum of 7 hours and a maximum of 8 hours. Maybe even 9 hours sometimes. And then it became a minimum of 6 hours and a maximum of 8 hours. And that's kind of settled like that for a long time, for years at that point, once it settled to that. And even then, sometimes we would be assigned to take a nap, regardless of how many hours we got that night. And if we couldn't sleep during that night, then we could just meditate or go through our day. Because every night, instruction was, when we laid in our bunk, to try to program our vehicle to wake up if there was a threat of compromising our behavior, like say like an influence that might stimulate our sexuality. Then we wanted to wake up. We want to program our vehicle to wake up immediately when that happens, and so we can shoo it away. And another thing that we were programming our vehicles to do. They didn't program us because we didn't like say this over and over again or anything like that. You know, they left it up to us to do it, and there was no monitoring system to know that we were doing it. And so that's why I say that we weren't manipulated at all. We were given the tools to wash our own brains. And we were washing our own brains with T&O's soap. They didn't say it with soap, but I just added that in as a... I don't think it's a bad thing, though. And so... because it was their tools that we were using to wash our brains. And those tools were the instructions they gave us. Or the procedures. And so another one was to try to remember our dreams. And because they said the next level sometimes can work with individuals to where they were preparing somebody for the next day's lessons through the dream world. And sometimes they had us share our dreams. I know there's an audio tape where Alodi is sharing a dream he had, which is hard to hear, those audio tapes. If anybody ever transcribes any of that, I'd love to have it, because I haven't found the time to do it, and the energy. So let's see, other things that we would do when we went down was we would program our vehicles that if we ended up on our stomach, we were to wake up and turn to our side or on our back. Didn't matter which side. So that we weren't stimulating our sensitive organs through our sensuality by being on our stomach. And we would go through our day, would be the last thing that we would do. Well, it didn't have to be the last thing. I shouldn't say that, but I think it ended up being, for me anyway. And that was to think about the things that we said and did that day, that thinking about them as if wondering whether there was something that we could do better in that regard. And if we came up with something that was in our day that, like we said to our partner, that we realized we really didn't, we could have said better, and it was really not a nice thing to say or whatever. And then they didn't say this, but we learned that it was okay to make it, so it wasn't a procedure, but it was okay then to go to that partner and tell them, clear the air with them, even if it was at night. But if we thought that they had already fallen asleep, then we wouldn't do that, because we wouldn't want to interfere with their rest. But that wasn't like a procedure that you had to get up and say that to your partner. But it would have been a procedure then to the next morning, as soon as possible, say to your partner, correct yourself, what you did that you felt like could have been said better or been done better. Because sometimes you would be talking about procedures and it wouldn't be that clear whether you were following procedures or not. But like for instance, my partner brought up to me that when I was walking around the campground, I looked like I was stomping around. And where we had lessons on trying to be gentle about the way we walked around and not be a stomper. And so they were bringing that up to me, and I said, the response that we were given to give, which was a specific response, was, thank you, I'll examine that. Instead of, you could ask questions, but if your questions ended up being a way of denying that there was something that you did wrong, and then getting into an argument, tit for tat kind of thing, which did happen many times between partners, then individuals needed to restrain themselves from that and just say, thank you, I'll examine that. And then really examine it. And then get back to them when you examine it. And some people would write notes to T and Do about it. And then sometimes that would get brought up in a meeting. That's what most of the meetings were composed of. Interfacing with one another. Because partnerships changed all the time, sometimes because partners didn't work together well, and sometimes because they worked too good together. They weren't bringing up the things that the other one could have improved upon. And we didn't assume that our partner wanted that correction. The partner, we were required to frequently ask the partner for that help. But they didn't tell us how frequently. So again, they left it up to our discretion on how frequently. So the whole thing was designed in such a way that we were in control of our own destiny. And that's why you could have one student that when we were fasting on water, not think anything about that time period for 13 days. That started with the first day fasting on air only, while we were living in the desert just west of Phoenix in trailers and tents, having just sold everything that we had in 5 houses worth of stuff in flea markets, not flea markets, and estate sales. We had estate sales in the houses that we were leaving. And then we sold the rest of it in flea markets in Phoenix, because we had a truck at that time, just to give you a little background. We went on a fast, and I learned later that from one of the other dropouts, Andoti, Frank, in the Heaven's Gate podcasts, that he didn't think the same way about that fast as I did. I thought that we were going into the desert to see if it was time to leave our vehicles, that we might fast until we left our vehicles. Because I remember climbing into my bunk in the trailer, because the trailers had, some of them had bunks, too high, and having no energy at all after several days without any food or food and just drinking water. And I remember thinking, I could curl up right now and maybe this is the way I was going to leave. And that was like it was after the 88 update. We left Dallas and we went to New Mexico, and then I think it's the selling of not 5 houses worth of things. Well, it might have been from Colorado then. So it would have been like 80. Oh, I just disconnected my my software, OBS, just disconnected and reconnected again. I don't know if there was a blip. It's done this before and it's worked okay. So, wow, I'm over 3 hours already. Jeez. Let me see if I can finish this thought at least before I end this conversation. Or not much of a conversation because I'm not going to the chat room very often. But right. I thought that we could leave our vehicles then. I feel like I got that from Doe, but I was more in touch with Doe than some other individuals in the class, because I was a craft overseer, and sometimes I would be called to Doe's craft with Sorority, who was my partner most often, to meet up with Doe and Livodi and Janody and just Sorority and I. In fact, we did that one time when we were watching on the TV, the 5 of us were watching on the TV when David Koresh, when his compound was lit up on fire, which I suspect was the introduction of what that documentary said, that they injected gas in there and then lit it up. I think it was like a flamethrower was fitted onto that tank to kill all those people that were in there, 90-something people, kids. So anyway, so I was watching that and Doe was aghast that happened, but it also gave him some. He used it as a positive, in the sense of wondering whether his students would be that committed to stay there when they knew that they could be killed. by staying in that compound. I know they probably thought they could be killed if they went outside the compound too, right? But some did leave the compound and were not killed. So they could have been watching those individuals to know whether they could leave or not. So some of them chose to stay there because they believed in that this was their end, their laying down of their life. Even though didn't believe in what David Koresh was teaching and doing. Not at all that I know of him. Did he side with him? But that doesn't judge the students. That for all we know, those could have been students that got off track, that were deposited with souls and got off track by following David Koresh, and they should have been in our classroom. And who knows, maybe those were the ones that joined in 1994. I mean, those kind of connections are possible. I'm not saying that those are the connections. I don't know. Dora didn't talk about it like that. They didn't go through details like that. And so maybe I'm a little inappropriate by doing it, but, I think it's not a bad thing to... I didn't get any signals from Tiendo that was wrong to say. But maybe I'm not sensitive to that being wrong to say. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt, I guess, as XF says about some of the things that he says. Hopefully it's a grain of salt that has its savor still, hasn't lost its savor. To be dead salt. I guess that would be like a dead soul, right? Would be dead salt. If the souls of the earth is the next level members that go through the overcoming process, then the ones that drop away and then go against the next level are demonstrating dying, at least in that moment. Not that they won't get another chance, maybe, but eventually they are. If they don't take advantage of the multiple chances they get, then they're going to become dead salt. That's the first time I actually thought of it that way. It makes sense to me because Tiendo did teach that the Luciferians were given many chances to change. And I think the last one was depicted in Revelation chapter 12. Where it says that they fall. First they go to war again with Michael and his archangels. No, Michael and his angels go to war against Luciferian space, the dragon, and the 10 horns and the 7 heads with the 7 crowns. Angels, workers, crew members. Because they're not. Well, they can be floating around if they're in soul form, which they are, but they can also be on spacecrafts with the vehicles that they grew hybridized from the human DNA, and they can be beaming down thoughts using technology, or maybe with their mind, because souls that graduated into the next level at one point do have more power than the souls that never graduated into the next level. But some of that power is that they know how the garden grows, so they're not in doubt about it. So they know that certain things can be done, and they know how to manipulate spirits, and they know how to go through places in the spirit world, the first heaven, that humans that never received that soul and never grew that soul, or never grew the soul to that degree, can't go to. Mainly because they don't know that they can't go to those places. It's like they don't have eyes to see. I just thought about it that way for the first time. They hadn't made their eyes single enough so that they couldn't see what was there all the time. And T taught us to try to help our eyes see, literally our physical eyes, by focusing on an object at a distance. Let's say I'm looking at a nail on the wall. Okay, I can see it clearly. I'm trying to focus so that I only see the nail, and I'm not seeing anything in my peripheral vision. Now, I can do that until I just actually do block out my peripheral vision completely, and I see like a nail. But I'm not gonna try to take it to that degree right now. But that happened last time I talked about this in another live stream. And then when you get zeroed in on that, then change it so that you're only seeing the peripheral vision, which would include the nail, but you would see your peripheral vision in addition to the nail on the wall. And then you go back to the nail again. And then you go back to the peripheral vision again. You go back to the nail again, peripheral vision again. And so we learned that in the campgrounds initially where we started to do it. And so I would do it with a tree or a mark on the tree, things like that. Well, I'm going to go back to the chat room, and I'm going to try to finish up the questions because I'm getting kind of worn out. I was 15 at the time. How old were you when you saw the tragedy? What tragedy is that? My parents let me stay up late to watch it in Australia. That was not a tragedy. T and Doe's departure and the crew of 38 individuals were not a tragedy for anybody. If somebody makes it into a tragedy, that's their choice. Because they were all voluntarily doing that. There was no manipulation in the classroom. I've been trying to describe that. I just wanted to respond to that. I guess you're talking about something else. I don't know what it is. Anyway, doesn't matter. But side note. The astronaut with the big curly hair was one of my first crushes. I was so young I didn't know what a crush was. Well, I guess I'm going to have to go back and read all this and see if I can figure out what you're all talking about. Maybe I won't ever figure that out, but yes, I remember the school teacher going on to, the Challenger. Oh, I see. Okay. And you guys are all having your conversations, and I'm yabbering around here, and do you guys believe in hell or some kind of reincarnation after the death of the vehicle. Why so many beasts in Revelation? Oh man, these are big subjects. Well, the ones that they say are the four are not beasts. They're living beings. And it's a different word. The beasts are the mammalian, poisonous mammalians. They're humans that are poisonous because they steer people away from the next level, the true next level. So they could be Christians, they could be, Jews, they could be Islam, they could be atheists, they could be anybody in their beliefs. But if they're teaching other people that the creators don't exist, then they're playing with fire. I don't know to what degree, but they're bringing that person poison. Because if they believe that the next level doesn't exist, then they won't have a chance to graduate into the next level once they establish that belief as their own, and they won't listen to anything else. Once they get to that point, they may still be brought back by the next level for a second opportunity or another opportunity, but they might not be. The Luciferians now had their last chance already, I think. I don't know that for a fact, though. I'm going by the scripture of the book of Revelation. But Tino didn't talk about that I can recall. No, actually, he did say in the USA Today, information advertisement. Wasn't really an advertisement, but more of a declaration or announcement. It was one of the seven thunders, is what it was. No, I never, if you're talking to me, I never said I had a son. I have it's the same question you asked me, I think, in a previous broadcast, live stream recently. Maybe even yesterday or the day before. Maybe you didn't stay around to hear it, or you walked away when I answered that. So I'll answer it again. I don't have a son. I have a daughter. My vehicle has a daughter, and she's 21. She was born in 1997. She was in the belly, her mother's belly, my partner of 17 years, when we were filming. The BBC was filming in our house in Carmel, New York. So I don't know if she believes in the next level. I don't ask her, and I don't tell her what to believe. I have told her that I believe Jesus was from the kingdom of God that created everything, and that Christians aren't really teaching what Jesus taught, and that Jesus came back, and I was the student of Jesus, for 19 years, and so that's about all I've taught her, told her, not teach. What difficulties do you experience in your family in not sharing your values? Well, I don't have difficulties anymore because that broke up the family. When my partner left me, and because we outgrew each other, I guess, is what happened. And or just went in different directions. And that was something that I encouraged to happen, actually, because I saw it coming for a while, and I knew that I wanted to give more and more of my efforts towards Tiendo, and so I didn't want to be having to answer to anybody else about where I put my energies. And I was writing a book at the time, and so I actually didn't consciously orchestrate her breaking up with me, but I kind of subconsciously did, or actually the next level, I believe, put it into motion. They put things together so that this individual that I played music with on a regular basis was homeless at the time, and I had space in the house, so I invited him to come live in my house. And when he came, he accepted, and when he came to the house, he had known he had known my ex before that, and so, but they didn't know each other that well. But anyway, but she says she fell in love with him then when he came to the house, and then he told me that he was having. He didn't want to go. He wasn't going to go in that direction with her. But then I told him, I said, go for it. If you want to, just go for it, because we're done. And it was painful still for me to break up with her, because I did love her. I do love her as a person. And but I need to put all my love to Tiendo as much as possible. I mean, I do show love to her, but not sexually anymore, and never any of that. And I don't have any other relationships with anybody, sexual relationships. I have friends though, and I don't have a sexual relationship with friends either. I don't have any sexual relationships at all. So it helped me break that degree of addiction. So who is Abandon, and what is the abyss? Abandon is the name that was given to, I believe, Lucifer. And the abyss is the bottomless pit, also said that way, which is the end, actually. It's hell. It's where there's no chance to return from, whether that's in I believe that's in a part of the spirit world that is probably literally underground, so where their spacecrafts are forced to go when the next level decides that they have to go there. And the way the next level can decide that they have to go there is probably pretty easy to tell when the infrastructure is being engulfed, when the beast is being engulfed by lava. That's what it appears that it's going to happen. That's going to be the end of the United States and the G7 and the G10 through volcanic eruptions. Well, they'll, some of them will try to go hide in their underground cities that they're building now. That's the reason why they want to get all the money out of the society as they can and make as much money as possible to pay for the building of all that, and also for the weaponry to fight against the next level, who some people think are the reptilians, but it's really the next level when the next level comes to recycle, which they're already here to recycle, but it's in very slow stages right now. Like we see with the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the tsunamis That just happened in a threesome. Wow. The same island had all three hit. The next level is showing things that are speeding up. Because there was another, I'm not even following all the earthquakes there are. I know there's that channel that follows all the earthquakes really well, does a good job. I had the time to check out what he's saying. So, oh well, maybe I got that wrong. Maybe Abandon is, now that you say that, maybe Abandon is the Lord of the abyss. In other words, the one that's the crew that's assigned to do whatever it takes to force the Luciferian space alien fallen angels to go back to their underground facilities, and then the next level might put a cap on it, maybe put a big ice cap on it. But right now, there's been parts of that ice cap that have melted. I don't know if that's the way it works exactly. I don't know. They might have a lot of ways to keep those Luciferians in there. They might be able to use magnetics, electromagnetic fields, to keep them at bay while they recycle and while they... So, but they might be escaping the recycling when they see that the handwriting is on the wall, that the recycling is taking place. In order to escape and run for their lives, that's more likely what I think they might see. But I don't know. Maybe the next level will let them know by showing up with a spacecraft wherever their spacecrafts are and literally towing them to underground, location. Because then it's supposed to be 1,000 years later they're released from that, and that's where the final judgment takes place with souls, and the humans that are in the nations are there too, that are left at that point, or maybe that started to grow again. Because I imagine it can happen pretty fast. Look at how fast Hawaii happened. Look at how fast Mount St. Helens happened. I mean, it can be like off one day and then on the next. So if the next level wanted to do something like Hawaii and not stop it, for 40 days and 40 nights, let's say they do that. At the same time, they do a bunch of hurricanes that flood the coasts and destroy everything on the coasts with big, huge hurricanes. Because Jesus said the waves would be roaring, and the fires, and the waves would be roaring. So that could happen very fast. And then the next level could, for the next 1,000 years, allow it to rebuild, allow some pockets of individuals, humans, to grow again, or bring back humans to grow again after they did that. There's different ways I think it could happen. Doe talked about some of that. Not exactly that part of it, so I could be wrong. Yeah, the little horn, you're actually, yeah. Actually, it's the little horn was, I think, from Daniel, right? And I forget whether it was Daniel 7, 8, or 9. Was it talking about the little horn? And I suspect that's the beast, this second beast that's in Revelation 13. After the one that's the wound is healed, which is the United States beast, the leader of the beast. I'm not sure though. I'm getting really tired, so I gotta make it. After this, I've gotta turn into a pumpkin. I think T&O said that. Maybe not. Maybe I got that from somebody else. Come to think of it. There it is. Revelation 13:11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spake like a dragon. So who would be the 2 horns? The 2 horns would be 2 groups and or individuals. I would say and. So it could identify 2 specific individuals, but it would also identify with specific groups that were acting like a lamb. Okay, so if you're acting like a lamb, then you're a peace-loving, lamb. You're gentle, and so I think those are talking about 2 spiritual groups, and I would say that would be the Pope and the Dalai Lama. That's my guess. Who the 2 horns would be of that beast. And I think that the beast itself, I think, would be the EU, because it comes out of the earth. It's exercising all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. So, whose deadly wound was healed. I think the 9/11 attack was the deadly wound. And I have other reasons for saying that, but I talked about it before a number of times, and I do need to come to a close. And so it's that beast that brings down the fire from the heavens on the earth in the sight of men. And so I talked about that in the previous live stream. Tried to go through that of the fire coming down from the heavens, which can be like the lasers, And doing great wonders can be like the Fatima, holograms, or fireballs within the atmosphere of the earth, because the signs from the next level are going to be of those kind of signs that when it comes to a light or lightning are going to be among the stars, among the sun, the moon, and the stars, the planets, the comets, the asteroids. Where the signs on the earth, where the earthquakes, the fires, the volcanoes, the brimstone, and the waves roaring is the way I think about it. The hurricanes, tornadoes. Well, T&O talks specifically about the next level using tornadoes to stimulate growth in places where they've stagnated. Get them to move along, go someplace else, where they can be subject to new opportunities. So with that said, 3 hours and 45 minutes, I don't want to get flagged for using too much time by the YouTube people. So I've got to try to keep them lower than this. I don't know what their rules are in this regard. They're just letting me do it. And I can see that I've had bad radio signals through part of this, so I'm frozen now on the screen. So I'm gonna take it to a close. So thank you for staying with me and giving me some individuals to share this with, because that's my pleasure to do, my joy to do, in service to Tiendo, to help others receive some of what I've received from Tiendo. So good night.